Rishi Sunak can't even tell us if he's backing candidates who are accused of wrongdoing on gambling. He can't tell us if he's prepared to have them as ministers in his government. He can't even tell us the extent of the problem. I just think this is the clear choice that people face on the 4th of July now. Do you want to, more chaos and division, or do you want to turn the page with a changed Labour Party that's now ready to offer the change the country needs to? On the NHS in particular, Rishi Sunak's argument seems to be you've never been paying such a heavy price for such an appalling service. And he seems to think that the measure of success in the NHS is how much money is being spent rather than how well the NHS serves its patients. This is a Prime Minister who is a complete busted flush. And if I were a betting man, I would bet that whatever the outcome of this election, Rishi Sunak will not be the leader of the Labour Party, which means a vote for the Conservative Party is a vote for any old clown coming in after the election to take over the circus.
The health service is not just about expenditure. We spend more money on the health service today than ever has been spent in history. Two of the biggest increases in the health service were just before COVID, the last 2 years before COVID. You know what happened? We spent more money and the number of people treated went down. So there's something we have to fix about the organisation as well as that. Similarly, you say people don't worry about taxes, but I've been walking streets and knocking on doors and talking to people for the last couple of weeks or so. They do care about taxes because money is scarce for people. Let's say we talk about food banks. Food banks have gone up. Why is that? It's because people haven't got enough money, and so if we let them keep more of their money and the state takes away less, then that's a good thing for them. So I think it's important. I was originally quite sceptic about the Rwanda scheme. I'm well known for being strong on civil liberties and so on. And one of the things I wasn't sure about was whether it would act as a disincentive, and a disincentive for people coming across the border. Well, you know what happened a few weeks ago, rather ironically, when the bill went through and got royal assent, suddenly illegal migrants started disappearing to Ireland. It was a slightly embarrassing thing for the Irish. Now, that if you want a demonstration right there and then of incentive working, it incentivized them to leave the country because they were worried about it. So that's the first thing. Secondly, what's interesting about the Rwanda scheme is whatever its difficulties, we are the ones prototyping it. You've got 14 different European countries copying us. Germany, Denmark, a whole series of them. The Netherlands, and I think Austria, I think is already en route to it. So if it applies across all of Europe, I think it would be a serious disincentive.
I think it's important that people understand three key things about national service policy. The first is that the vast majority of countries in Europe, the countries that we visit, know and understand, countries like Netherlands and Denmark and Finland and Sweden, they all have a version of national service. Okay, so this is a common thing across Europe. The second thing is the military option will just be that, an option. It will not be compulsory in order to join the military. And in fact, the military option will be very selective and very competitive. And the third thing is, I think it's good that we ask people, when they turn 18, you become a full adult citizen at 18, you say to people, yes, being a citizen comes with lots of rights, but it also comes with obligations and responsibilities. And I think that this could be a really positive thing for young people. I also think it will help social cohesion and social mobility, linking up people from different parts of the country, different backgrounds, races, and actually seeing this as a really positive thing for young people, I think is the right way to go. People are right that the detail does have to be worked out. That's why we're going to put together a royal commission that will work out all the detail around this. But I think it's a very important thing and could be a really positive thing for young people.
Having suffered a near extinction event in 2019, Keir Starmer won the leadership of the Labour Party, promising to lead us back to government, to deliver the change that was needed in the Labour Party. And when he said he would listen to the country, he really listened. He's reconnected the Labour Party with lifelong supporters that we should have never broken faith with. He has also extended the appeal of the Labour Party into millions of Conservative voters who feel deeply let down by the state of their party now. And so I think at this election, there is only one candidate for Prime Minister who is able to unite our country, to heal divisions, to offer the change our country needs, and is prepared to make the hard choices that political leadership requires. And that is Keir Starmer. You saw that on the platform this evening. He's changed the Labour Party. He understands the country. And with the permission of the country, we can deliver the change that Britain needs.
We've watched the debates. We've seen the leaders of three of the big parties. Did they say what you thought they were going to say?
Well, for Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer in particular, there were only two aims. For Starmer, it was not to make a massive clangor, and for Rishi, it was to come out fighting and look like he can actually win this election after three shocking polls in recent days. What Keir Starmer did was not make that massive mistake, and he'll be very happy with this debate. But for Rishi Sunak, he may not have made that impact that he would have liked on voters' minds just 2 weeks to the election.
Well, I sort of think that the one theme I would say there is tonight is that love is not in the air.
But if I'm put in a position where I'm forced to choose between those things, I'm going to put our country's national security first every single time, and I make absolutely no apology about that.
Keir Starmer, a lot of pressure on that point about why did you say that Jeremy Corbyn would be a great Prime Minister when clearly you didn't think that. Interestingly, he had said something I hadn't heard him say, which is he appeared to suggest that Jeremy Corbyn would have made a better Prime Minister than Boris Johnson. That's quite interesting. And then Rishi Sunak facing questions on things like the Rwanda flights and the European Court of Human Rights. Every time Ed Davey is questioned, people say, as you say, aren't these gimmicks? And he says, OK, I did fall off a paddleboard. Yes, I did go down a chute, I think, in Devon or whatever it was. But what he's saying is that in each of those cases, he was highlighting a serious issue. So when he fell off the paddleboard on Lake Windermere in the Lake District, he said he was highlighting sewage in Lake Windermere. When he went down that chute, he was highlighting mental health. And so he said, yes, OK, it might look a bit trivial, but I am actually highlighting very, very serious issues. And, you know, the party election broadcast he did was of him caring for his son. You know, he's a carer. He cares for his son, John. And all parties, I think, have praised that. And a leader of a major political party highlighting caring, everyone agrees that that's a good and serious thing to do.
Well, it's interesting. It's one of the first times you see sort of the Liberal Democrats making more ambitious spending pledges than the Labour Party. And of course, Ed Davey argued today that everything is fully costed and you can check everything out on the manifesto, but voters will still be concerned about tax rises needed, and also they will be concerned about Sir Ed Davey's record when it comes especially to raising tuition fees, which I know is particularly important to student media and students like yourself.
So speaking to students on campus, particularly issues facing the Middle East have been really important. We have the York student encampment right here at the university and across universities in the UK. Do you think this sort of salient issue of the Middle East will impact the outcome of the election and the Labour Party in particular?
So there's some evidence that this issue has changed voters' minds, that it has shaped voting behaviour for many voters. However, there's limited evidence to suggest that it would determine or influence the overall election outcome. It might, however, make certain seats that once looked particularly safe for Labour more difficult to contend.
You know, there's a humanitarian crisis going on in the world. Innocent people are being killed, bombed, schools are being destroyed, mosques, churches, families are being ripped apart. And what are they doing? Just watching, sitting back, watching.
Do you think the parties are doing enough to really reach out to young voters?
I think parties are starting to get a lot better at reaching out to young voters. They've been doing more social media, they've been finding new ways to connect with voters. However, I still think there's a lot more that parties can do. I think parties can try and speak to more younger voters, try and listen to the issues that they're concerned about. So, for example, the environment is an issue that's particularly high on young voters' agenda, voters who are aged 18 to 24. Parties should really think about what it is that voters want and try and convey this.
You're absolutely right to ask about young people. It's why we want to help young people get on the housing ladder. It's why we've been talking about today a fairer deal on rent, because we know that the high rent costs are such a struggle for young people. We also want to create good, well-paid jobs across the country. 650,000 good, well-paid jobs in renewable energy sources. That is good for the economy, it's good for our climate change commitments, but it also cuts energy bills for good. And the very youngest of young people, children, and of course it's a cliche, but the future of this country is literally our children. We're going to give every child access to free breakfast clubs in primary schools and recruit more teachers in schools for children as well, because giving children the best start in life is not only good for the individual children themselves, it's the best investment any country can make for its future also.
John, can I ask about uni tuition fees as well? Because Keir said he doesn't want to abolish them. But unis are obviously in a financial sort of crisis right now. What can Labour Party do to help that?
Well, look, he said tonight you've got to make tough choices, and his choice is, although we obviously need to look at how the financing of HE is properly looked at and reformed. He was making the choice that we've got to put the money into the National Health Service.
And any thoughts on international students?
Well, I'm a MP. Well, sorry, beg your pardon. I'm a candidate for Leicester, where we have two fantastic universities, the Leicester University and De Montfort University. International students are a very important part of our university community in Leicester, and we're very proud of them.
So are tuition fees currently low on the pecking order?
You've got to make choices, and we made our choice around where to put the investment in, and we, as Keir was saying, we had to make a choice to put the NHS first.
I'm really glad that Keir took the issue head on and was honest about the choices that lie ahead, because I would much rather that we were honest with people this side of the election than do what we've seen other political parties do in the past, which is to say one thing before an election, then let people down afterwards. I think we do have a strong offer for young people in this country, building 1.5 million more homes to buy, homes to rent will make a real difference for a generation that's affected badly by the housing crisis. Our offer on young people's mental health will make a big difference, particularly for this lockdown generation, making sure that young people have access not just to university but to high quality skills and apprenticeships for the jobs of the future. That is a strong offer for young people. And, I think by contrast, you see where the Conservatives have left young people, which is completely out in the cold. So we want to be a party that appeals to every part of the country, to every age group in our society, and we want to make sure that young people growing up in Britain today can look forward to their future rather than dreading their future, and we can only do that if we have a change of government.
Students have, in the longer run, the same interests as everybody else. They want good jobs, they want to be able to buy houses, they want low taxes so they can keep more of their pay, they want an economy that's thriving. They want investment in technology in Britain because that will give them jobs as well. All those things are important to students just as much as everybody else. And that's, this Prime Minister took over at a difficult time, let's be clear about that, immediately after Liz Truss. And so confidence in politics was low, and he'd argued with her policies, he disagreed with them, he straightened them out, and we've got to a point where the economy is now stable. I mean, I'm old enough, I don't quite remember Gladstone, but I'm old enough to remember Thatcher, and Thatcher would have given her eye teeth to get inflation down from 11% to 2%. Now, that may sound not terribly important, but it is for ordinary families trying to pay the bills. It is also very important in terms of keeping things like mortgage costs down, which you'll worry about when you leave university and eventually get a house. But it's also important to be able to reduce taxes. So all those things, I think, are vitally important.
A lot of young people have suffered the brunt of COVID. In particular, and they've seen their early years of adult life that have been very difficult because of the consequences of COVID. I really, really do not minimise that, and it's been really tough on a lot of young people. But what do I say to them when I see them in Hitchin and elsewhere, in my constituency and around the country? I say, if you want a good future, you need to keep more of the money that you earn. And the Conservative Party is one committed to cutting your taxes. If you want a good future, you may want to own a home in future. The Conservative Party is one that is committed to giving you cutting stamp duty for all first-time buyers on properties under £425,000, which across most of this country is ample, a decent amount for your first property. If you want a good future, we want to make sure that you have the right skills and responsibilities to operate as a citizen. That's a positive thing. That's why the National Service Policy is a good one. And there are all sorts of other things I can't remember. But the key thing here, I want every single young person to know, is that do not just do what you're expected to do and vote for a left-wing party because that's what's fashionable or that's what you're told by your friends. Examine things for yourself, make your own judgment.
A really popular statistic lately that has been shared by a lot of students has been the fact that nearly all pensioners are registered to vote compared to only 60% of 18 to 24-year-olds. Why do you think this is and why is it important?
I think there's a couple of reasons for this. So firstly, there's something that we would call habitual voting. So habitual voting is where if you've voted in elections, you become more and more likely to vote. So here, older voters are more likely to have voted in elections compared to younger voters. So they're more in the habit of having voted at election time. The other reason is because of younger voters' living situations. So often younger voters tend to move around, they tend to move house a lot, whereas older voters tend to be more settled, they tend to be settled in particular constituencies, for example. So there's multiple reasons for this, but partly habitual voting and also differences in living situations.
York and North Yorkshire is absolutely brimming with political history. It's so important. But how do you think it could shape the election? Obviously, Rishi Sunak is only a stone's throw away, not only in the studio, but in the region itself. What impact do you think the region has on the whole outcome?
Massive. So, I mean, you can go back centuries for political history because York used to be the home of the Council of the North centuries and centuries ago, like Henry VIII's time. So that's one of the reasons that it feels so special to be here tonight. But fast forward to now, well, York and North Yorkshire are really interesting because for a long time, North Yorkshire in particular was a real Conservative stronghold. You knew that the Conservatives were probably going to win, so the story was by what size of vote share. That's really starting to change, and cracks are starting to appear in some of that Conservative dominance. So it's going to be really interesting to see, do any seats change hands here? Do any other parties take seats that have been Conservative for a long time? That will all be decided on July the 4th, and we'll get the results overnight, July the 4th into July the 5th. And on top of all of that, we've got the Prime Minister who is defending a seat in this part of the world, and so that is absolutely massive.